What's happening, guys? It's your boy TK Torch, and I got another one for you. I'm gonna be pushing this and this, doing a little push-pull training. I don't have a tripod, so I can't really, my camera angles are really type bad, but I do have an iPhone, so the video would be pretty decent enough, I guess. So now the difference between these two, I picked these two specific things because they're still light objects. They're still considered a smaller object. But there's also not that much mass to it, not that much weight to it. This one is definitely really light. You know, all smokers know what this is. But this, smokers should know what this is also. But this is actually more heavier than this, believe it or not, because this is just plastic, you know, just like a little plastic bubble thing, and this is more of a solidy, like cardboardy type of, I wouldn't say cardboard, it's a little harder than cardboard, but it's basically a heavier material, so this would be lighter. And yes, it's very important that you start with light objects. This is what I started with right here. If you see my first video, you see me messing around with foil paper. I recommend foil paper for beginners because, you know, it's like one of the lightest things in the world, honestly. But it's very light. And I started with this, and now I'm getting really good movement and results from it without having to swing my hand too hard. You know, so that's how you know that it's not, you know, air when pushing it, and you know it's energy. Oh, and by the way, if you're pushing like this with your hand and then you stop moving your hand and you can't get it to move, then you're using energy and not mind. If you use mind, it's something different. I mean, it's one and the same, but energy is different. Energy, when you use energy to do TK, it can tire you out. If you're using mind, you won't ever get tired. You can do it like forever because you can do this forever. But yeah, start with something like this, something very light. You know, a piece of paper is fine also. But I would say start with foil paper because foil paper is a lot more heavier. If you're starting with a PSI wheel, I recommend also starting with foil paper. But I would start trying push and pull first. Push and pull TK first because I feel like it's the easiest to learn, you know, because I've been practicing with PSI wheels all my life. You know, I got PSI wheels all over the freaking place, and I've been getting some good results from the PSI wheel, but at the same time, once I switched to just using the foil paper and practicing pushing and pulling, I started getting a lot more results a lot faster, you feel me? So I recommend trying pushing and pulling, and also use foil paper. But if you're using the PSI wheel and you're getting good results, good movement, I don't recommend switching over to pushing and pulling with foil paper just yet, only because you may be using mind to move the PSI wheel. And as soon as you start practicing pushing and pulling, I don't know, this is how it was for me, but as soon as you start getting results, doing pushing and pulling, the PSI wheel training kind of regresses in your mind, I think. This is what's happening to me because I'm getting less, the stronger I get pushing and pulling with energy, I feel like right now the weaker I'm getting with the PSI wheel, because I was getting the PSI wheel to move really well, getting full revolutions before I started doing pushing and pulling. But now that I started the pushing and pulling, the PSI wheel training felt like it regressed for me. But I can still get movement from the PSI wheel, just not as strong as I was getting before. But anyways, so that's my explanation and how to, well, not my explanation, but that's my tips on how to on starting learning TK. And I'm just show you demonstration now, just because every good story needs a demonstration, right? Okay, so I'll start with this, piece of foil, like I recommended. Right, this is my left hand. A lot of people says that you push with your right, you pull with your left, but I can push and pull with both hands. Boom, push, boom, push, boom, pull. That one's a little trickier. I'm pulling and it's going forward. Boom, pull. Look at that. That was a very strong pull right there. I think it's more. It does. I don't think it really has to do much with the hands. And I know for a fact it has something to do with the right hand, left hand might be negative, positive, and whatnot, and that can thing. But I feel like once you learn how to move energy and stuff like that, and invoke the movement yourself, then you can be able to push and pull with any arm. You feel me? Okay, let's blast this one away. Boom. And let's go with this first. All right, you don't want to do that. You don't want to swing your hand really, really hard, because then that'll just be wind. And then, you got the wind skeptics. But you move your hand like this, it's still connecting to me, but it's connecting. I don't know how to turn it off. I honestly don't know how to turn it off. But basically, this is what you want. This is the fastest you should be. You should be swinging your arm, because then that it's not wind. You really know that that's not wind. And even if it is wind, all this gets it to do is to rock back and forth a little bit. But it won't get it rolling like that. You feel me? But basically, when you start doing it and you start, start with how heavy swing you want to start with, I guess. But eventually, when you start getting motion and shit, you want to, start swinging a lot less harder, because now it's connecting to you. Now you're connecting to the object, and it's not an object. Don't think of it as an object. Think of it as your hand. Like, how do you move your hand? You want to go inside yourself. You definitely practice in TK, then meditation will be a really big step to progressing fast. Well, chronic meditation. If you're meditating like for 10 minutes every day, once for 10 minutes every day, or once every 3 days or something, then you're not going to make much progress. It's telekinesis is like everything else. You gotta, consistency breeds progress. Okay, push that. This video is getting type long, so I'm gonna just do the demonstrations, explain what I'm doing while I'm demonstrating, and then I'll cut the video. Right, with this. And the smaller, tinier objects, you have to go on a really smaller scale with it. The bigger objects is easier to push because you have a bigger target to aim at. But when I first started doing small objects like this, I couldn't get it to move at all. But everything else around it was freaking out hella hard, because the energy was just flying over it and then hitting everything in the background. And that's part of the reason why I put this right here, and that's my target. So whenever I'm trying to push this, I'm not picturing in my head, because then you start picturing it in your head, then you're using the brain, and you need to be using mind, and you have to turn your brain off for mind, right? So it's more of a feeling than a thinking. I'm feeling that I'm pushing from the little black area, you feel me? And that gets it to, you feel me, without having to be like, or like really tense up your muscles and stuff, because you're not actually supposed to be tensing up. I've seen a lot of people do TK and they tense up when they try to push something heavier. But the fact of the matter is, you're supposed to be able to push heavy objects without even having to tense up, so you want to get to a point where you can push stuff without tensing up. Wait Boom. Right? See you guys on the next one.